Hi, Elliot.
Hi, afternoon, Danny. How you doing?
Hello,
Good, thank you.
guys.
How are
How
you?
are you all?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you.
Good to see you, Lucy and Danny. Just give me one moment. I'm just doing a couple of background things on this stream to make sure it's running properly. I'll be with you right. I'm not going anywhere, but I'll backstream.
Did you have the beautiful sunshine at the weekend?
Yeah. Lost track of days now. I can't even think what I did at the weekend. It's hard to remember, isn't it?
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
nice.
lovely on Saturday and Sunday. It was lovely where I am.
Whereabouts are you?
Near Stamford, Peterborough area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very nice.
I'm gonna try and refresh my sense of geography for a second, and I'm being nosy and searching on Google Maps to see what's in your vicinity. I'm originally from Norwich, so not too far away, I guess.
No,
Yeah,
that's our nearest coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not too far away, really. Where are you based now, Danny?
I'm in West London.
Oh, okay. Bit different to Norwich.
It is a bit different to Norwich. Norwich is fine, but I was glad to leave when I went to university and left. I don't know, but I think I come to peace with it more as I get older. It's a nicer place to be, but when you're young, it's not exactly the epicenter of excitement. But
no, that's
getting better.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. I love it there, absolutely love it. It's more the coastal area around there. We tend to go like Heacham and Cromer and
love Cromer.
Yeah, really, Cromer, we've been there millions of times as kids. I love it, absolutely love it. I'd move there if I could. I'm showing my age.
Yes, I spent about 6 months, had a job in Norwich. I really enjoyed that town and the area around. I've been to Cromer as well. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, I had the nice weather. It sounds like you guys did as well, but I think the east of the country wasn't so good. Well, mind you, Peterborough's east, isn't it? I had relatives
mid
in
to east, yeah.
Essex. You said it was really cold.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Boiling in London.
Yeah.
Really hot, wasn't it, though? It was really hot. Particularly Sunday. I was out walking the dog and I thought, I didn't have a coat on and I was actually...
Me neither.
Crazy.
I know, but like the morning I woke up was quite grey, then suddenly the sun came out again.
Yeah.
This is the most British conversation I've been in a while. Like there's a heat wave.
Leave us alone. It's February.
It's always that first.
February we're allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining again today. So today we're going to sort of talk about social media, but we'll come at it from the organic sense. So a bit like last time, instead of me just diving straight into the content, I've got a lot of content today, but I want to just go around and just understand from each of you how social media, to what extent it's used in your organization and kind of how it's used, I guess. I'm going to start with Danny because I've got a feeling it's going to be star of the week again. Let's see, Danny.
So what do we do? Is that your question? Yeah, okay. So our main platforms are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We don't really do much beyond that. Because we have separate schools, we actually have some additional accounts for them. So we have free Facebook and free Instagram for those. What else would I add? What else would you like to know?
Kind of, Yeah, so that those are that's really cool. But also, how is it managed? Is there like a sort of a workflow? How many people are involved and things like that?
So because we're quite a small organization, we don't have a whole team dedicated to it. I pretty much manage all of the channels myself, doing all of the organic, and Giuseppe, who's our digital marketing manager, works with Mintwist and heads up a lot of the paid advertising side of things that we do. So I would say that I manage organic. However, I do some sponsored post work on Facebook and Instagram as well. That's not a huge amount of spend per month, maybe only like a couple of £100. So there is a kind of a need to try and make the most of that budget as well. But yeah, I think I've said previously in our meeting, we have weekly editorial meetings. We had one this morning, and the purpose of that is for everyone to share news and information, things that's going on in the business, which then feeds into a weekly content calendar for social media that I would manage.
Cool. And how long have you been doing that job, Danny? Roughly?
About 5 or 6 years, and a lot of things have changed because of just technology and social media. At the point at which I started, I think we were then launching our Instagram account, and now, I mean, sounds kind of modest, but we have over 10,000 followers on our Instagram page for London now, and that obviously opens up benefits for additional functionality on there, which was really good. So yeah, things have changed a bit over time.
Okay, all right, cool. Thanks very much for that. Should we come to Daisy next? Daisy.
Yeah, sorry, I'm off you now. Our social media, well, it was run by me and the head of marketing, but Mintwist have now just taken over our social media in the last couple of weeks, which is mainly Instagram, Facebook. They're trying to get more TikTok and those kind of sites, as well as just Instagram and Facebook, and more Twitter as well, because that's been quite neglected prior when we had it. But yeah, so Mintwist is now, that's in your hands.
Good stuff. And so thus far to this point, to what extent do you think social media has had an impact on the growth of I know it's a growth business, like how much of a role has social media had to play in that?
Well, it's definitely had a big role. We've definitely built, I think when I started there was about 2,000 followers, and I think we've now got nearly 5,000 or something like that. So I mean, we're definitely growing. We definitely need a lot more followers. It's definitely been good for things like competitions and for announcing opening up stores and things like that, just to kind of grow brand awareness mainly. And also Hot Chocolate, you can do nice pictures and stuff, which, you know, people like. So yeah, so no, it's definitely, we need to grow more, but it's definitely been a useful platform so far.
Okay, cool. And then one final question, if I may, because you're a retail brand, how much customer service or customer feedback do you get on your social channels, and you know, which channels they tend to come on?
We do get some customer feedback on our social media, but not so much. We've had mainly through emails, and we've done a lot of reviews at the moment, and customer reviews and emails, that kind of thing. So that's mainly where we've had most of our feedback, and from Amazon reviews, that kind of stuff has mainly where we get our feedback, rather than social media, really.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Daisy. Anything to add to that for Noops, Emily?
Not really, no. I mean, it was interesting about the customer service, because we actually try and deviate that away from social media. Because we're still quite a new startup, we found that a lot was going into social media, and it was annoying the marketing team, because they became customer service reps. So that's kind of moved away now. We've got loads of separate inboxes for that. So, you know, we're trying to keep social media for its primary use. Obviously, we don't ignore anything that comes through social media if it's to do with customer service. But I think the great thing about our product, as Daisy said, is it's quite good to be photographed. So a strong point is that we're able to take people's stories off Instagram, because you tend to find people photograph their products when they buy it, and we can share them. Then obviously users get excited if they see that their stories been then shared by us. So yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, it's I think it's a really common challenge for B2C brands, particularly if they've got an e-commerce play, which obviously you guys do, you can cut customers start using channels for purposes that you didn't necessarily think they would, and it's always a bit of a challenge. Okay, Lucy.
So yeah, we don't really do a lot on social media at the moment, Elliot. We did a little when we were Faxi. We were on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, but we always wanted to do more. Now we're Kinto Join, and we're doing our big relaunch. Obviously we are still on LinkedIn, but as far as the other channels are concerned, we haven't really done a great deal up to this point. We've only just launched the website, so for us it's really early stages, but I know that there are conversations going on throughout Toyota at the moment, because obviously there's lots of people that we can make full use of in order to push it down the different channels that are available. So I think only kind of time will tell from that perspective, but as I say, at the moment I can't really say much more than that, because we're not really doing anything, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool. So when I was putting together this content particularly for this particular class, even more than the other one, I obviously I kind of knew where Kinto Join are at. There's not too much going on, Lucy, and client farmer, Victoria Neal, who are not here today, would have been in a similar boat. And then we've got Noops, which is, like as you just heard from Daisy, they've done quite a lot quite quickly, and Danny's obviously been working in the space. So we've got some quite disparate set of people. So that's the reason why I've put together the content in a way. So we're going to start quite slowly with the basics about kind of what it means, how to use it, and stuff like that. So Danny and Daisy and Emily, you're going to have to bear with me, but and then we'll move quite quickly into kind of the process that a digital marketing agency like Mint Twist might start to follow if we're running a project for Noops, and hopefully that's going to be relevant for everyone. Okay, any questions for a start? Okay. Okay. So this is week 4, and thank you for sharing. Some an idea of what you're doing in your organization. It's always great to get just before we start. There's this word called SMO, which stands for social media optimization. And for me, even being in the industry, as I've mentioned a couple of times, there's so many different buzzwords. So SMO is supposed to be the social media equivalent to SEO for search, if that makes sense. So search engine optimization is the organic form of search marketing. And then there's search marketing, which is the advertising form of search marketing, which is AdWords, and you can advertise on Bing and Yahoo and others as well. And we're actually going to do that next week. So this week we're going to talk about social media optimization, which is social media but not including the advertising. Next, the week after, we'll do social media advertising. Having said that, a lot of organic strategy might involve boosting posts, and that's what Danny was referring to there. You can spend a relatively small amount of money to boost the reach that you get normally within your existing audience, and that can be a component of kind of an organic strategy, let's say. But for the purposes of today, we're going to be focusing mostly on this side, so the organic social side. I suppose obviously there is overlap, there is some overlap. But having said that, you can have like completely distinct strategies. So for a lot of clients that Mint Twist work with on the advertising side, they're using advertising primarily to reach and engage and indeed convert new customers. So it's exceptionally ROI in terms of it's like from a monetary perspective, it's ROI focused. Organic social media, sometimes, often but not always, is less focused on the direct response money aspect of it. I'm generalizing here, but hopefully it's sort of painting a picture. The organic social, you can kind of argue about, you can make an argument that it's more about engaging your existing audiences and exciting them, and taking part in the communities that are meaningful to your brand. And so let's, as I said, we'll sort of start slowly here and just clarify what we mean by reach and engagement from a social media perspective. I thought I'll make use of some well-known celebrities so we all know what we're saying here. So Beyonce, because she's hugely talented, she's got a huge sort of global following, she's got a really massive reach, and that's Beyonce. Having seen Price also has a massive following, but she's really into the engagement thing. So Katie Price is a social media, if you like, will run the sorts of things that, will run competition live. She live streamed herself for 4 days running, and she had all sorts of, across multiple channels all at once, and she had all sorts of engaging things going on. And so Katie Price as a brand is very big on engagement. Beyonce, less active on social media channels as a brand, but still has that reach. So social media marketing, if depending on what sort of, obviously if you've got influencers that have huge following, you can create awareness. So it's not necessarily just about engagement, but probably for most sort of brands, it is about that middle of the funnel play. For me, it's about engaging your existing communities, and as we touched on, potentially engaging existing customers and motivating. From a marketing strategy perspective, it's keeping in touch with people is probably a good way of thinking about it. Having said that, social media is like all of these topics, it's really big. There is an awareness play, particularly if either you've got access to influencers within your industry, or within your own sphere, within your own niche, you've got people who are very influential. So someone like Client Pharma, that they have specialists working in that business who have a not necessarily a huge audience, but a large audience within the niche that they work. And that might be the case with Faxi and Kinto Join as well, and no doubt it's the case for Matfilm and for Noops. Okay, so let's just talk about sort of awareness type content. So if Kim Kardashian creates some content that's really outlandish and all about, this image was went along with the tagline, let's break the internet. So this type of, in the case of Kim Kardashian, outlandish content is all about creating big awareness and going wide. Having said that, she's got her TV show, she's got her celebrity appearances and events, and all of this stuff creates engagement with existing audiences, or in this case fans of the Kim Kardashian brand. Now the key point is you need both. One or the other, need both. To optimize your strategy, you need the awareness stuff, but you also need ways of creating engagement. And when we heard Daisy talking about competitions and things like that, and for many brands that's a really great way of creating engagement, but obviously there are lots of tactics. Before we move into some sort of deeper things on strategy, I wanted to talk a bit about engagement rates for a moment. So just really, really broadly, and there are lots of sort of ways that you can define this, but if you to work out an engagement rate, it tells you how attractive is that particular brand to their particular audience. So a way of a sort of a benchmark way of doing it broadly is to look at what's the average number of engagement, so likes and comments in the case of Instagram, the equivalents on the other channels. What is the average engagement per post as a percentage of the total following, or the network size? So around 800,000 as a percentage of 80 million is about 1%. So sort of so that you can benchmark this, if you're talking about really big brands, like Nike, or like a personal brand like Kim Kardashian, where you're talking about tens or even over 100 million followers, an engagement rate of 1%, is very good. It's pretty good, very good at those numbers. So there is a engagement will drop as a proportion of normally, everything else being normal, as a size of your following. So if you go from 10,000 to 100,000, it's normal to expect your engagement rate, your organic engagement rate, to drop a bit as a percentage. But having said that, you can optimize your engagement rate by having a really good understanding of what your audience on that, at least on that particular channel, the types of content that they will engage with, and then creating more of that type of content, frankly. And so you will find significant variations between brands in terms of engagement rate, all else being equal. And it's typically down to their content strategy. So, you know, not to sort of bag on Zara, but they're a reasonably good example of a brand that doesn't have a particularly good understanding of at least in terms of their engagement rate, if you take that as a guide of what their sort of audience are looking for. So they've got 28 million followers or thereabouts, and they're averaging at about 0.25% engagement rate. If we just go back to Nike, they've got a pretty clear strategy. You know, everyone sort of obviously knows the Nike brand. It's all about, you know, just do it. It's all about this inspiration. So they create content that is continuously inspirational. Sometimes they'll use, you know, really famous people. This is Mbappe. He's a very famous footballer. But they actually, if you go to their Instagram feed, you also find, you know, regular people who are not necessarily hugely famous, but all of their content, it's underpinned by this concept of let's inspire each other, you know, and watch inspiring videos. They create inspirational content. Zara, you know, it's probably improving. I haven't looked at it for a little while yet, but for a long time, yeah, and I think still they're possibly guilty of taking essentially magazine shots and just putting down on Instagram, which as a tactic for raising engagements probably is not a particularly good one. Right, so before we dig into strategy a bit more, let's just have a look at the landscape. So in order to do that, I've pulled some stats, and there's I'm going to put in the LinkedIn group, I'm going to put a link to the 2021 global social media report. It's something that's created by a few firms in partnership that put sort of work in the social media space. You know, Hootsuite and others. I'll sort of credit them because they create a really great report every year, and it's on every single country in the world, and it's stats on social media. But I pulled out some key ones here, and this is for the UK. So this is just UK audiences. You'll find sort of similar trends if you look at sort of, you know, Western European countries, but just give you some of the key ones. The top line along here, this is 2019, so data from January 2019, and the bottom line down here, this is data from January 2021. So this is what's happened essentially over the last 2 years. So, you know, the UK's population, I guess it's about 65 million or something like that. So it was 67% of the population were active social media users 2 years ago, and that's gone up to 77%. You know, nothing too surprising there. It's gone significantly up. Total number of active social users accessing via mobile devices. So it was already more than 50% 2 years ago, but that particular jump as a percentage, so number of people accessing social media as a percentage of the total number of social media users, it's gone up significantly. So it's virtually everyone that's using social media is active, at least to some extent, and we can assume that the percentage of time that they're spending is also increasing on mobile. It's gone up really significantly. So just in case anyone didn't already know, social media is essentially utterly connected to mobile. So the concept of mobile marketing, I remember not too long ago, it was a thing. Really, in this day and age, mobile marketing is, it's social media marketing, essentially. Okay. I just want to check that my internet connection still. Give me a wave if you're still there.
I'm here, but mine's not great.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, mine's breaking up a bit as well, but I'm going to keep going. But do shout out if you lose me completely. Okay, so just continuing then. So again, a number of people who visited or used a social network or messaging service in the last month. So this is anyone who used it for at least 1 month. And look, there's a marginal change. I think we can assume that the UK market is basically essentially saturated. It's almost everyone who's using it, at least periodically. Actively engaged with or contributed to social media in the last month. So again, that number's gone up pretty significantly relative to the total number of users. So what that's saying is that people are still becoming even more active. So nearly everyone is active, as opposed to a significant minority who were using it passively. The number of actual channels isn't going up. So in fact, it's going down slightly. So we could assume that users are either fixed on your channels, or if they're bringing new ones in, they're losing one. So we're unlikely to trend above this number of 7. But as we've seen, people are becoming more active on those particular platforms. And then the other really significant stat that's mainly significant for anyone sort of here or watching this is that there's been a significant jump of users who use social media for work purposes. So it's still a relatively small number, just under 30% are using social media for work purposes, but it's more than doubled in 2 years. So if that's a trend that continues, I'm sure that the key lesson there is social media is not going anywhere in terms of its use for work, and in fact it's becoming much more important for work. So I've just got the 21 stats here. The main change from Jan 21 to Jan 21 from Jan 2019 is just YouTube has become number 1, and it's just pipped Facebook. So if you want to call YouTube a social media platform, it's arguable. Some people like to call it that. Some people call it a streaming platform. But in any case, this is saying that virtually 80% of the percentage of internet users, which, as we've seen, is almost everyone. So 80% of that number actually use YouTube, and then Facebook is Facebook, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. Obviously all part of Facebook. Instagram is owned by Facebook as well. So those guys are the big ones who are in second place. Facebook's nicely spread out there. Instagram still, certainly for UK audiences and other audiences, is growing pretty quickly. And then we've got obviously the Twitter's there, and then the big one for the B2B companies is LinkedIn, which is also growing pretty significantly for the UK market, and indeed most of its other markets. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. Let's just talk about each platform and how their sort of demographics break down. So Facebook audience overview, the potential reach in terms of the UK population. It's nearly 40 million people. Its coverage is insane. It's massive. And compared to Facebook's potential advertising audience compared to the total population, so we can reach 66% of the total population. It's not growing its reach because Facebook as a platform, certainly in the UK, is not growing particularly. It's sort of plateaued in the UK market. It's pretty evenly split between male and female, marginally more female users as a percentage. YouTube, again, male and female, pretty evenly split, but YouTube's reach is increasing as its penetration amongst its users in terms of people who watch YouTube, but also the length of time they're spending on the platform makes YouTube a significant, serious play, certainly from an advertising perspective and therefore from a content strategy perspective. Instagram, as we mentioned, it's growing very quickly. It's not quite as, the reach is not quite as large as Facebook or YouTube's in terms of people, but it's growing very quickly. And again, there's a reasonable slant towards females. LinkedIn, the B2B platform, again, it's growing quite significantly, quarter-on-quarter growth in terms of its reach. There's a slight slant towards males on that particular platform. And then Twitter, Twitter's reach is static, stroke, dropping a little bit. In the UK, it is a significant platform. Like the UK for Twitter, you'll find that UK is sort of 2 or 3 times the penetration in terms of percentage of the population as with sort of equivalent European countries. Again, there's sort of 60% of the users are male on the Twitter platform. And then final one we've got here is Pinterest. Pinterest is still developing its advertising reach, so don't pay too much attention to that drop in reach. It's got a significant minority population, and it's got a really strong slant. A really large number of as percentage females are using this platform. Okay, I'll just sort of drop off for a moment, and you've sort of given me a bit of an understanding of sort of what you're doing with social media or what we're not doing. But I'd like to dig into it a bit more. Like let's start with Danny first of all. From your perspective, how do you use the social media channels differently? I know you mentioned the channels they use, but is there any difference in terms of the way that you're using them and how your users are interacting with you on those particulars?
Yeah, so definitely we'll try to push any particular piece of content on as many different channels as possible just to reach the maximum amount of people. But because of the nature of certain platforms, often the post and the design and the mode of it, of the way you communicate that has to change a little bit. Particularly when you're, say, a piece of content on LinkedIn would be presented in a completely different way to Instagram. I think most of us all know that. In terms of managing it, I mean, we try to keep a fairly high volume of posting. Probably there's going to be loads of organizations that do a lot more, but for the size of the organization, I'm trying to post at least 1 to 2 things a day. In terms of what kind of platforms are significant for us, we have a kind of a youthful and creative audience. So Instagram is just a no-brainer for us, and it's something that we're seeing increasing amount of engagement on. Probably seeing then equally Facebook going down really. I think there are a lot of, I think for a lot of startups and a lot of people that have a similar audience to us, even if they're starting their business now, they're probably even considering not having a Facebook. I see that increasingly now with different startups and websites where they don't even bother, but now we certainly do. I'm trying to think what to add beyond that, Elliot.
Sorry, Danny, you're still with me. I'm losing you.
I was asking, is there anything you wanted me to add to that?
Sorry, you've been breaking up, so I completely missed that question. I heard the comment about Facebook, which I thought was really interesting. So you're seeing a lot of startups just bypass Facebook completely and go straight to Instagram, right?
Yeah. I think that's increasingly common, and we do see a little bit of feedback. I mean, we hear from our own students that they don't use and engage on Facebook anymore. They're not interested too much, but we have a responsibility as well as a school we're also communicating to parents and adults and other people in other sides of the industry. So it's something that we continue to do, but we're definitely putting more focus on things like Instagram these days.
Yeah, I think in terms of your target audience, absolutely Instagram's going to be more important than Facebook for an organic play. But you make a good point about the parents, and I suppose the other thing to consider is if you are running social media advertising, and you are you manage Instagram ads via the Facebook platform, as I'm sure you know. So there's always the argument that if you're going to run Facebook ads, even Facebook ads on Instagram, it kind of makes sense having a Facebook page in order to sort of mop up some of the organic overflow that you naturally would get from advertising. What about some of the other channels, the emerging ones? Like is TikTok something you're looking at? I'm sorry if you mention
No,
that?
yeah. So we opened a TikTok account recently, and another member of my team is actually managing that because he manages video content for the team. He also does our YouTube channel. I'd ever think about YouTube as social media. I know we kind of mentioned that before, but yeah, we have started with a TikTok, and there's been a bit on there. I haven't seen a lot of it so far. My personal feeling when we were starting it was that it's obviously a great thing, particularly for the younger end of our audience, but it's something that has to be handled mindfully, because you can come across as being completely out of sync with your demographic and the times if you start using it blindly as just somewhere to advertise and push products. I think TikTok is it's about capturing the zeitgeist, the young mentality, and realizing how kind of left field a lot of the humor is on there and stuff. So yeah, I'd say that's definitely a platform to be kind of like, you have to understand what the reason is for getting involved with it, and if you do think you're the kind of organization that should be involved with it, how best to present yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm definitely way too out of touch to know exactly what's going on. But look, you know, from a technical perspective, you know, there has been on that platform in particular, it's almost like the anti-influence. It's the anti-classic influencer platform. So if you're an influencer that's big, or a celebrity or something like that, you know, unless you do it well, Gordon Ramsay's probably an example of someone who's taken his fame and is doing very well on that platform. But I think there are a lot of others who haven't done so well on that platform because of the backlash against like you say, the culture. I guess the culture of Instagram, you can't just put it on TikTok. Quite the opposite in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, what I would be really keen to do, and I think we are considering doing, is working at how we get more of our students to contribute content to that platform, and kind of showcasing them more on it, rather than us feeling like we're talking to a younger audience on there, which might not always work.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely good idea, and one of the things, I mean, there's not any particular slides on it here, for no other reason than you know, we've got a limited period of time. But for me, the future of a lot of the social channels, not just TikTok, but potentially others, is when we're talking about influencers, is actually ambassadors. So it's who is within your organization that can be an ambassador on your organization and has some form of profile on some of these networks, and how can we leverage that? And you know, there are B2B companies that are really interested in this space. You know, that some of them are talking to Mid-Twist. It's not just a B2C play, although an organization like, you know, a university that does to a lot of students, you know, we can view them, if we engage them in the right way, obviously, as ambassadors, and it can be a really powerful way of creating a footprint on some of these networks. Okay, should we come to Daisy? I think I heard you mention that you've started experimenting with TikTok. Is that right?
Well, yeah, so we downloaded TikTok, and at the moment we haven't actually put any videos out ourselves. We've just starting to do paid advertising on it, but we're kind of hoping to drive more other people experimenting with our hot chocolate in various hot chocolate machines. There's been lots of kind of content and videos on that, and there's been quite a lot of organically people have been doing that. So we're thinking about pushing out to people with various products and stuff to try and increase that more, and try and see more of that. But yeah, because TikTok wasn't really a thing we knew that much about before, but we're gonna try out. Mid-Twist gonna carry on with trying to generate more content with that.
Okay, good. Well, we'll report on how it goes as we go through this, or you can feed back to us.
Okay. Emily just messaged me saying, I'm really sorry, but her internet's gone, so that's why she's suddenly.
I'm sorry. Well, hopefully, well, mine's been shaky, but it seems to be holding up just now. So hopefully we'll make it through. And anything else you want to say, Daisy, on the social channels that you're using and how users are interacting with them? Which one would you say is the most popular one in terms of your users wanting to read your content?
Definitely Instagram, we get tagged in loads in the day and people comment, and there's so many stories. I think also because our stores are quite aesthetic to put up pictures with and stuff, which works really well with Instagram, whereas Facebook, I feel people don't, they've got, Facebook stories and stuff, but I feel like people don't interact or use that as much as they do with Instagram and Instagram stories. And we've been trying to do lots more interactive Instagram stories as well, giving them a choice to say answer things and stuff like that, which is actually interactive stories and interactive posts where we ask a question, say in what's your favorite percentage of chocolate. That kind of thing definitely gets a lot more engagement than anything on Facebook does.
Yeah, no, it's really good to know. It sounds like you're being really creative, but actually what you're saying is sort of underpinned by sort of wider metrics. So Instagram typically will, certainly relative to Facebook and a lot of the others, will be the most engaging platform. So I think something like average, just obviously industry, not industry specific, but average engagement rates might be for Instagram for a channel of sort of, 5,000 followers might be sort of 5%, and then the equivalent post on Facebook might be 0.5%. So it's really quite a big difference. And it's largely to do with the metrics, with the way the platforms are made up, but also, the sorts of things that you're doing sound like they're working. Okay, Lucy, so you meant sort of Kinto fairly new to this. What sort of channels do you think might be important for you sort of going forward, or any other point?
Yeah. So I see that there's quite a few different channels that could work for us. But historically, I've personally had quite a bit of success through LinkedIn, being business to business. It's been quite valuable in the past, certainly when we were Faxi, and I can see it being pretty much the same when we move over to Kinto. Well, now we've moved over to Kinto Join. We did do some on Facebook. We did do a little bit on Instagram, but unfortunately at the time we just didn't have the resources to put into it. I noticed obviously with Danny and Daisy that the actual work and the time that's spent going into developing these channels is just paramount to the success of it. And I think up until this point, we haven't really had anybody that's been able to dedicate that time to actually to growing those areas. But as I say, we're in a lot better position now in terms of support that we're receiving. So certainly, I mean, my views would 100% be LinkedIn from a business to business perspective, but also Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah, from because we've got two different sides to our business as well in terms of growth. We've got the clients, so which is obviously the business to business, but also we will end up having a huge user base. So the end users are people that are actually using this technology. So they're also going to be really important to us in order to grow that side of things. So eventually in all honesty, I can probably see majority of the social media streams working quite well for us.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's some really good points there. I want to pick up on a couple of them. I mean, your final point is it was a really, really good one, because if your initiative, or sorry, when your initiative works, you could have tens of thousands of users, potentially more than that, worldwide, hundreds of thousands, millions possibly.
Yeah.
And you're talking about is that's an influencer base that you need to keep happy with the service, but also if you're engaging them with relevant stuff, then it's potentially a massive opportunity to sort of to continue to increase awareness for the products and services that you'll be offering.
Yeah, that's right.
That is a really good point. The other thing you said is about the time investments. So Daisy and Danny, you can hear from the way they're talking about this, it's a big part of what they do. It's partly because for them it's important today. For Kinto Join, it's almost like it's a tomorrow question to some extent, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It is.
But the truth is, it's with social media, it is time consuming. There is no getting away from it. because at the heart of it, if you're going to do the engagement stuff really well, you've got to nurture. I wouldn't necessarily say it needs to be your community, because it might be a case of being active within communities that you don't own. You're just an active member of them. But it's gonna take authenticity. It's going to take knowledge of the subject area, understanding of the culture. Danny touched on that, and so it's not easy to do. It does take time, but it kind of comes back to what we were saying with SEO. It's like that's what business is all about. It's deciding where to put your chips, sort of so to speak, isn't it? I guess. The other point you made on LinkedIn, just while we're here on that, because for me, LinkedIn's for B2B companies, it's really interesting platform. Obviously, it's typically with B2B companies that sort of work with us. They're looking at LinkedIn and Twitter, and you can work both of them in slightly different ways. But LinkedIn's become the engagement rates, as we sort of saw in the thing, going up. The reach of the platform is going up. But the other thing that I've noticed change is that it's much more, let's say, acceptable and actually advantageous for members of organizations to be active individually. And then it's okay that you're connected to an organization that might have a brand voice and a tone of voice and a certain POV that doesn't have to actually be identical to that individual. I've seen a lot more of that, and I think we'll see that going forward as well.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts or insights before we move on?
Just about LinkedIn, just something else. I noticed what you said as well, but also a lot of kind of like almost like storytelling, or people kind of like taking you on a small journey and writing maybe like 200 or 300 words, which you now don't really see on other social media platforms. And those kind of posts seem to be getting a huge amount of engagement as well. So also people like considering social media has in association with people just scrolling through mindlessly and not actually stopping to read anything. I think that's really interesting with LinkedIn, that people maybe are taking the time and they want to be spoken to in a bit more than just 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Danny. I do on LinkedIn, but in general, I think like the whole concept of sort of telling a story, and I've spoken already about episodic content, so that story can evolve over time. If you can get it right, that seems to be an emerging tactic that works on LinkedIn, but other channels as well. That's a good point. Okay, this next bit of this next set of slides, there's quite a lot in here, so I'm going to sort of move through at a reasonable pace. But I do think on this section, do jump in if you've got any questions. I think because there's quite a lot to sort of go through, so definitely do jump in, and then we'll get together and speak at the end again. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing screen, am I? Share screen. Sorry, can't slide. Okay, so we'll sort of just jog through sort of strategy. So with any sort of strategy, it's all about working out what our objectives are, and then working out relative goals. So strategic objectives, these are the things that our organization is trying to achieve. How do we break them down into goals? And then when we're clear about what the goals are, we can create relevant KPIs, key performance indicators. So if and we might have one or more objectives and a number of goals, and we certainly will have a number of KPIs. But if we want to grow our brand, so grow awareness, it is a lot to do with reach, and so we might measure that with impressions, share of voice if we're in a competitive space and we're benchmarking against competitors. We might want to turn customers into advocates, and we sort of touched on this in the last little section of conversation. And if we want to do that, then we definitely want to engage our customers, and competitions and giveaways might be one way of doing that. And then the engagement rate, so the likes, favorites, the comments, The engagement rate percentage will be the sorts of KPIs that we'll talk about there. If it is about driving leads and sales, and we've said that, most organic strategies, that's going to be, obviously we want that, it's going to be a positive byproduct, but it's not the most common, leading objective that I see for organic social. But if we are doing that, then obviously we've got to look at those particular metrics. Improving customer retention. See, for anything to do with hospitality, then making sure that those reviews, if they're negative, we want to deal with them. If we're positive, we ideally want them to appear on our review platform of choice. So having a review strategy, which might be, if we're a hospital group, for example, a hotel group, for example, following up with customers and asking, was everything okay? And if it is okay, would they mind leaving a review on this particular place? And if it wasn't okay, let us know and we'll make it right. And all of these ways are ways of mitigating bad reviews, making the most of potentially good reviews and maximizing reviews, and and that will lead to improved customer retention and indeed more referrals and more upsells and cross sells. Okay, if we're talking about strategy, that these are the typically start off with an audit. So during an audit, we'd want to analyze our existing current audiences, look at all of the competitors and look at their audiences, and look at any other industry influencers, and again look at their audiences, optimize our profile and our content strategy, and then obviously measure our analytics and insights against our KPIs and continuously benchmark against those competitors that we've looked in. So those are the main steps. The purpose of knowing the competition, if we know what's expected of the industry and we know what our competitors are doing well and what they're not doing well, then it helps us set our own targets, but it will probably also inform some specific tactics, and it will give us specific profiles that we can go and engage with. If we can see a competitor of ours is getting good engagement because of some particularly influential profiles that they're connecting with, then are those profiles that we can develop relationships with too. And so when we talk about social media marketing strategies, something called social listening, which is a really important comment. So there are a whole bunch of platforms and tools that you can use to do this, and some of them are very simple and some of them are extremely advanced and cost a lot of money. Whatever you do, the idea is that if you're listening to the conversations that your audience are having, that your competitors are having, and you analyze that information and you draw out some insights, it's going to inform the content that you create and share. So this listen before you speak is what we're saying there. There's quite a lot of text on these slides, so I'll just skim these, and you can download this content from the LinkedIn group anytime you want and look at them, look at the stuff in a bit more detail. But it's social listening allows us to assess the performance of our content strategy. So if we're listening to how we're doing today, and then we've got a content strategy, what we want to see is next month and the month after that we're getting increased levels of engagement, because if we're drawing the right insights and we're creating the right content, we should see improvements in those engagement rates and the other metrics that we're looking at. It will also let us engage with our customers. There's particularly if we've got a brand, not all of them, well, in fact, the majority of the mentions of our brand name will not use the hashtag, so we can't just rely on the in-platform notifications. So this is when we log into a platform, we'll be notified of all of the mentions that we've had. But that's only if our audiences are using our particular handle. If they just mention the brand in text without using the handle, then ideally we would want our social listening set up so we can monitor that and engage with those conversations as well. If with the sort of brand that has the danger, let's say, of potentially negative comments, and we want to, the general rule of thumb with negative comments is we want to engage those comments, and address them. If we need to, we can take them offline, but social listening can obviously help us with that. You've already spoken about tracking competitors, but you can also track hashtags as well. Finding pain points. So this is where we do our industry research. If there are particular questions, pain points, and/or questions that are being asked by our audience, maybe we can create some content to directly answer those questions. We've spoken about leads, identifying influencers and advocates. If we got our social media listening set up correctly, then we can identify influence and advocates that we wouldn't otherwise know about. There's this thing called sentiment, which is here. So some of the tools are getting increasingly good at looking at, say, if we're brands that generate a lot of conversation about us, then we want to automate the process of understanding which conversations are negative in sentiment, which ones are positive, and then we can split those up and address them accordingly. And some tools are quite good at doing that, increasingly good at doing that using artificial intelligence. So all in all, social listening allows us to build relationships, brand reputation, and discover new opportunities and threats, and it should inform strategy. So optimizing profiles. So this is a step that we would take once an audit has been run. So you make sure those usernames and handles, ideally they're going to be as consistent as possible. We review our profile picture and cover photo. So for something like LinkedIn, the background is an opportunity for us to communicate visually what the key message is that we want to present on that particular channel. So if we're a very London-centric organization, is that key message? Do we want something that's visually indicating London? You work out your profile picture and your cover photo, and you try and roll that strategy across the social networks in accordance with your goals for that particular network. And obviously the bios. And if we want to be really clever on tracking, if we can use tracking links, so UTMs, so these are links that will allow us to monitor inside our Google Analytics or inside our analytics systems, how many people are clicking these links, and then what they're doing on the destination of those links. If it's going onto our website, then we can start to measure the value of traffic that's coming from some of our social media platforms to our actual website. So just to clarify what we mean by this, inside the profile, you're going to have areas where you can put your site, and you can even embed links in posts and other areas of the social media platform. So if we are tracking those links, we can start to measure value more distinctly. How discoverable are we in social media searches? And again, we can look at how discoverable we are versus our competitors, and we can make adjustments to the profile based on that. Pinning, a lot of the social channels allow you to pin posts, so that's an important component as well. Knowing each platform's optimal formats and dimensions, so that's what it says on the tin. I would sort of go further and saying, that's the strategy for that particular platform, and then we want our profile area to reflect what we're going to be doing on that particular platform. And just to sort of make that point, so define a strategy for each network. So this brand of cosmetics, they create makeup tutorials, and they will go on YouTube, and they're repurposed for Instagram stories, but Twitter is absolutely their platform for customer service, and there is no posting of makeup tutorials. It's just a customer service platform. So I'm not saying it needs to be that distinct, but in our view, it's very good practice to try and be clear about what that particular platform is all about. Maybe just to put a Mintvist example on that, I suppose from a Mintvist perspective, the platforms that we look at as sort of potential customer platforms would definitely be LinkedIn. Twitter is about us sharing our content, our blog articles, our educational content. LinkedIn is the platform that we hope that we can engage our audiences. But when we see people coming from LinkedIn, the sorts of activities that they're taking on our websites imply that they are potential customers. So they're going in and hitting that inquiry form in greater percentage than traffic from Facebook. Because for Mint Twist, the Facebook channel, although customers are welcome sort of to go there, the primary audience arguably is almost like, former interns, are the people who work with Mint Twist, their families, I guess the network of Mint Twist partners. That's the purpose of Facebook. LinkedIn, as I mentioned, is different again. So having an idea about what each channel is there to do is a good idea. I'll talk a bit about creating a social media calendar. So Danny's used this word, and just to sort of clarify. So the idea of a calendar is, here is a plan of all of the types of content that I'm going to create for all of the different channels that I'll be working with for a given month or 6 months or year. And you can have master calendars that give generalized information, and more detailed monthly calendars where you're more specific about the content you're creating. And a social media calendar and a content calendar, might even be 2 parts of the same document. So, it's extremely connected to content. So there's different sort of ideas about exactly how you do this. And obviously every channel works slightly differently, but there's, the idea really is to vary your content, obviously you create a content strategy that you think is going to work from your audience, and you're going to put in some different types of content. And then you obviously measure the engagement or reach of these various types of contents, and then you tweak your strategy going forward. The 80-20 rule talks about 80% of content you create should be informative, educational, or entertainment. How can I be inspired would be informative. What can I learn would be educational, and entertain me is entertainment. And so if we create content like that, it's going to typically get more engagement than content that says, buy my product or buy my service. That sales type content typically will not get the same level of engagement. Having said that, if one of your objectives is to motivate sales and leads, then obviously you want some of that content. So the idea is, for every 5 posts you create 1 salesy one, and for ones that would fit into one of those other areas. And again, that would be quite specific, of what your objective is and what your sort of brand values are. It doesn't mean you have to have educational, entertaining, and informative. It might be just educational, informative, or just entertainment. And then the social media rule of thirds talks about a third of content is promoting your business, converting readers. A third of content that's about sharing ideas and stories from thought leaders, so you're nurturing that community. And then another third of content that's behind the scenes, the personalities in your audience. So those are obviously 2 distinct tactics, but these are ones that are often referenced by social media experts. Then I suppose a more distinct way to think about varying your content is this idea of topics, and formats. Let's just dig into what we mean by that. So on topics, when we're choosing a topic, the way to think about it is, what's it in relation to our business? Does it relate to our customers? Does it relate to our people, our products and services? The culture of the specifics of our company, the industry that we're in, or is it something else? So you answer the question for this particular post. So this is by post, right? So for this particular post, how does it relate to my business? What is it? Is it a promotion? Is it an update? Is it a bit of knowledge sharing? Is it responding to a query or a typical frequently asked question? And then what value does it offer? Is it informative, entertaining, thought-provoking, or is it some way of creating a connection? So that's how we can pick a topic. And then the format thing is, and this is a little bit specific on the channel, but there's so many different formats. So we've got animated GIFs, we've got live streaming, influencers, video, polls, competitions, you can share documents, images. There's a whole range of formats that we can use. So if we get a right topic and we get a right format, you can see that you can vary the content, quite significantly, because there's so many formats and there's obviously so many different topics. Now, on those topics and those formats need to fit within our general content strategy. So we don't want to go completely Wild West, but within what we're trying to do, we can vary our content. And if we do that, and we've got a nice content calendar, so we know what topics we're going to use, we know what formats we're going to use, on which days we're going to do it, and we know how we're going to repurpose that piece across the channels that are relevant for us, then again, over time, we'll have the capability to measure the performance of these things. Okay, tone of voice. Tone of voice. So we want to, the key thing here is we want to write from the reader's perspective. So, if we're seeing the word you, it's, you should mean the reader. We want to avoid too much industry jargon. It doesn't really work on social media, and we want to be consistent across our channels. All right, just quickly check the time. Okay. We'll sort of talk in the end and find out from Danny and Daisy if they're scheduling posts at the moment. There are lots of different ways to do that. You can to a certain extent do it within the platform. And there are some tools that let you do that as well. If we can schedule our content, it allows us to flow. So we go from content calendar to scheduler, and then we report and analyze the data off the back of what we've done. Your calendar should be a live document, so we definitely want to make adjustments to it based on what we see happening. Having said that you should schedule content, in social media, there's always the opportunity to jump on some existing trend, so it doesn't negate the need or indeed the benefit of sort of being reactive as well. If we do have a specific influencer strategy, so some brands will draw down on influencers who are obviously doing their own work, then we want to make sure that we're aligning with whatever they're doing, particularly if it's some sort of coordinated campaign. And then user-generated content more broadly. So if we're the type of organization that's lucky enough to have lots of users creating content that we can term as user-generated content that we can leverage, so if they're positively mentioning our branding content that we're creating, then we want to be able to incorporate that into our strategy. Okay, there's a few more slides. I'm going to zip through them and then we'll drop into a final discussion. So engagement, it starts off right at the start. It's really important because it's a big part of what the benefits that organic social media can bring. We talk about public engagement. So this is engaging in public, meaning if we're mentioned on a Twitter post and we start engaging with that post, we can call that public engagement. Similarly with Facebook. And then private engagement, which is more like the direct messages, closed groups that exist on a lot of the platforms. So private engagement and public engagement, both are good. Public engagement, first of all, we want to listen and then respond. So as we mentioned, we've got to make sure we're listening for our brand mentions, because they're not always going to use our handle. But if we are mentioned, then we want to respond to it. But we've also got the opportunities, obviously, instigate discussions. So asking questions, hosting Q&As is a good way to instigate a public discussion. There's some other points there, but I'll skip on. Private engagement. So we've mentioned there is this play for closed groups. Now we've touched on a couple of times that Facebook engagement, there is a narrative that says Facebook engagement, is sort of dropping and it's not good, and organic reach is not good, and that's partially true. But there's one area of Facebook that's where some brands are getting a lot of joy, and that is Facebook groups. And so again, like Lucy was saying, it does take a time investment. But some brands who have started up Facebook groups, and then they're working quite hard at nurturing that community, will see really, really strong engagement rates and valuable conversations that are happening. In direct messages, it's if we're going to allow users to potentially be able to direct message us, then we certainly want to be in a position to respond, ideally as quickly as possible. Message bots, they can help in this instance if we've set them up. Automated responses, might be able to help, but by themselves, they're unlikely to work unless there's some sort of manual follow-up. So direct messages, it's a big opportunity, but to a certain extent, it's also, it's potentially an overhead. But if you can get it right, via direct messages or closed groups, private engagement, is good. The key thing is we spoke about the algorithm, I think the week before last, and we said that because of advertising and the increased competition, it's harder to get reach. The private group thing in particular, or direct messaging in general, is sort of one way to overcome that. It's if we have a community of people, if we're lucky enough to have a community of people that are actually asking us questions, if we're proactive and genuine and authentic in the way that we answer those questions and engage those messages, then we will nurture loyalty, and and that is very ultimately a great way of building a community, which is which will give us an opportunity to beat the algorithm, let's say. Okay, just a couple of final points to note. Danny touched on this right at the start. So this really thin blue line that you can barely see is the organic impressions for a piece of content. If you pay a relatively small amount of money, you can significantly increase the impressions. So that's the reach of a piece of content. That's paid boosting. And if the reach and the awareness that part of it is important to you, then that's something. It's just something to note. I think I put down a couple of sort of key things that I wanted to say here. I think everyone knows social media is already inherently mobile. We have to think mobile when we're creating content. Video is becoming increasingly important on almost all of the platforms, via stories, but the other formats that are around, including live streaming, which is at the bottom there. And then the third point, it's this thing again. Danny mentioned it. It's storytelling, ephemeral content, episodic content. Is key, and then being consistent with that will allow us to grow an audience. And then the last one I just wanted to put in here was there's the new kid on the block, which is called Clubhouse. By itself, it's an interesting platform, and I'll ask in a moment if anyone's on there yet. But more generally, this is what's known as instant voice platforms, instant voice social media networks. So these are live conversations, audio conversations that are happening between users. You've got various rooms that can be opened by users, attended by users. Users will be talking about a subject of their choice, and they invite attendees of that room to contribute to the conversations. There's a lot of buzz around Clubhouse at the moment, but will these sorts of apps take over, let's say, the traditional apps, or will the traditional apps have to transform to provide similar sorts of features? I think it's an interesting one. I don't want to say for sure yet, but I think they've got a good chance. Okay, so we've got a few more minutes, so I'd love to maybe start a question for anyone who's on Clubhouse. Okay. If anyone wants to be on Clubhouse, I think I've got the ability to send invites. So if you, because at the moment it's an invite-only platform, but I think it's a marketing sort of stunt. It's pretty once you get on the platform, it's quite easy to be able to invite anyone else. So let's come to Lucy first this time, because I keep picking on Danny. So what any thoughts, questions, or insights on any of that, or anything else to do with social?
It's just given me food for thought, really, more than anything, to be honest with you, Elliot. It's quite interesting, because all of that side of things really is going to be looked after by a different department to myself. So it's just quite interesting to obviously hear all of the different areas and things, and to obviously take that away and to give it some consideration. I think for me, probably in all of this, what's been really key is the segregation between the clients, the business to business and the business to B2C, sorry. I think that's really important, and I think we need to be focusing on those people quite a lot, so our social media channels could effectively be opened up quite considerably. And I haven't even heard of that Clubhouse, but it does look quite interesting, and something that I'd be really keen to have a look at. So yeah, but sorry, I don't really have a huge amount to say on it, Elliot. It's just not something we've been working on up until this point, really.
No, look, that's totally cool. It's I think you're right. I think in the B2B world, traditionally it's been, you've got your work profile and, you know, everyone else kind of needs to stay away from it. That's changing quite quickly, and progressive companies are leveraging their people as ambassadors, which, you know, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danny, should we come to you?
I actually find it quite hard to know what to say, because this is just such a vast issue, and you went through some slides there that you could talk for ages about any given slide for a while. And at the moment, I've actually been trying to sign up to various there's some really good digital marketing social media specialists out there that do like free e-shots and newsletters and stuff, that I sign up with the best intentions, and then I get them, and then there's like 20 links with any given email, and you can spend hours on this stuff. It's a time sink, and I think so far with my own kind of just having to balance my time, I have to try and be realistic as much as I can with what I can achieve out of social media. And to the extent when you were talking about content calendars, like I really simplified mine a year ago and really thanked myself for it, because I was obsessing over recording the exact text for every different platform and stuff, and realizing I'd rather dedicate more time to actually doing more posting than just kind of recording everything all the time. For me, the next step at the moment is I've just picked out a social media management tool and signed up to Sprout Social, and I really need to get better at metrics and actually showing the success of what we're doing with all of that content, because at the moment I think that's my Achilles heel. So I've got some learning to do.
Yeah. You make it like, so one of the things I love most about digital marketing is it's just like a never-ending topic that connects, you know, psychology, human behavior, technology, content, everything. So it's an impossible task, but a social media management platform like Sprout Social, which is really good. It's a really good platform, I think. It's not a big beast, but it's a good, solid, really good platform, and you know, you can build on it and actually make it, you know, a very big platform. But it allows you to focus on some of the key metrics, and it will sort of help you with workflow and things like that. So I think that will definitely help. You're right, though. You've got to get the balance between measurement and actually doing stuff. If you spend all time measuring and not doing anything, then, you know, clearly that's no good. It's all balance. Yeah. Look, hopefully that was helpful. But you're right. Each topic you can just dive deeper into, so you've got to be careful. Just on the specialist, then, is there anyone in particular that you're signed up for? Is there any? Where are you looking?
What is his name? Is it? I actually watched a session recently. Which is it? Matt Navarra. He did it on Facebook, which I thought was interesting. Where another member of his team was kind of like asking questions about the state of the industry and talking about different things on each different social media platform that you can be taking advantage of and stuff. Also, Sean Adams in the music community, he the owner of Drowned in Sound website. He's been starting some private groups up as well, and he's always really inspiring. He's previously he used to manage the social accounts on BBC Six Music as well, which were fantastic for engagement particularly on Twitter as well, with their kind of questions and Friday questions and stuff. Some really good stuff there, but I think he's moved on now. There's one. Let me just share have any of you heard of the Social Media Examiner? It's here. So it's a website, but really it's a pod. They've got 2 podcasts and they've got a good YouTube channel. But the social media marketing podcast has been going for a long time now. They interview Navarra was on there recently. Who was the other guy you mentioned? Adams. Sean Adams, I think.
Yeah, that name rings a bell. But basically, it's a US thing, but they interview players in the digital marketing industry from all over the world. A lot of them are from the US, but there are a lot from the UK as well. And then it covers all the social channels. I've found that I've been listening to this for years, and I find this a good way of consuming, high level knowledge about social media. It's general topics, covers all sorts of topics, but each week they'll have an influence in the digital marketing space. So that's really good. They got another talk show, which is actually a live streamed one, which is more like news. So like updates from Facebook and things like that. So that's, obviously there's loads of places where you can go to look at content, but if you're looking for a podcast, I would recommend that one. Daisy, should we come to you? Any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, no, I just thought a really interesting part was the bit you were saying to be consistent across all channels, because we looked at that big time when I first started. I wrote out brand positioning to look at our values, what makes us different, everything that you mentioned with that. And then our big thing is to try and be consistent throughout all our platforms with our message and our values and on our tone, basically. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, look, in an ideal world, your brand profiles can be consistent, and then if you've got influencers underneath that or ambassadors, they can do things in their own sort of way, shape, or form, and then collectively you get this nice footprint that all works together. Okay. So unless there are any other questions, thank you very much again for a lovely session. I've really enjoyed your company. I'm going to put these slides up onto the LinkedIn group so you can download them from there. I'll also put a link to that report that I mentioned from Hootsuite, the social media report, because it's a global report, really interesting. And obviously, if you've got any other questions between now and next week, then either email me or post them on the LinkedIn, whatever you want. Okay, have a lovely week, everyone, and have a nice evening.
And you, Elliot. Thanks ever so much.
Yeah. Bye.
My pleasure, Lucy.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Danny. Bye, Daisy.